All right, one last video about multiplying and dividing fractions. Multiplying and dividing fractions are really super simple. Much easier than adding and subtracting, which I quickly explained in my first video. Mainly because you don't have to worry about a common denominator. Okay, so let's say you had 2/3 and multiply 1/2. Okay. Multiplication is super simple. You just multiply straight across, denominator by denominator. 2 times 3 is 6, and numerator by numerator. Then you will simplify if you can, and this will get simplified to 1/3. And I explain simplification in a different video, so you can watch that one. Let's try a larger one. Let's say you have 14 over 20 times 10 over 100. Okay. There are a couple of things you can do so that you don't have to reduce at the end, but let me do that in a different way. Let's just go ahead and multiply straight across. 14 times 10 is 140, and 20 times 100 is 2,000. It looks like a huge number, right? But one of the things you can do is that if your numbers end in 0, you can add 1 0 at the top cancels a 0 at the bottom. That's in effect dividing it by 10. So I can do like this, which means I just reduce this fraction to 14 over 200, which means I really just divide it by 10, okay? Because that's a common denominator. Then I can continue to reduce because 14 is divisible by 2, which is 7. And 200 divided by 2 is 100. And I can't go anywhere from this anymore because 7 is a prime number. I can't make it any smaller. But you could have done this a little bit differently from the beginning, so it would have been a little bit easier from the beginning. What you can do is, remember, anything from the top and the bottom can cancel each other, or if you can figure out what they have in common, you can simplify in advance. So for example, I know that I can go like this. There are many ways of doing this, but 10 can be divided by 10 and give me 1, and 20 can be divided by 10 and give me 2. Okay, you can do that. And 14 can be divided by 2, which gives me 7. And 100 can be divided by 2, which gives me 50. So now I have smaller numbers that I can multiply. 1 times 7 is 7. And 2 times 50 is 100. And you notice that I got the same number. Okay, except that I reduce in advance. This takes practice, but if you can do it in advance, why not? Okay, especially if there are numbers that are huge, you can do as much simplification as you want on top. Usually we do it across, not one in top and bottom, but that's also possible. So for example, I could have done this. Same fraction again. I could have realized that both 7, 14, and 20 are divisible by 2 and change this into 7 over 10. And I could have recognized that 10 and 100 are both divisible by 10, which would have given me 1 over 10. And then 7 times 1 is 7. 10 times 10 is 100, which gives me the same number again. Okay, so that's possible in multiplication. Okay, for multiplication. This does not apply to addition and subtraction, okay, or division. This is for multiplication, okay? Divisions of fractions are actually a lot easier than most people think because divisions of fractions are really multiplication. You just have to take one step before you do it. So for example, let's say you have 3/4 divided by 1/2. And sometimes it's not possible to divide, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. So let's just do this. What you need to do to divide is you basically rewrite the division as a multiplication by writing the first fraction, changing the division sign to multiplication, and flipping the second fraction. Okay, then you have a multiplication at hand. It's done. This is the same as the top. 2 times 3 is 6. 4 times 1 is 4, and it gives you a mixed number, I mean, an improper fraction, which you can simplify to a mixed number, okay? So actually, let's simplify it first. You can simplify this by dividing both by 2, so you give 3 halves, okay? And then 3 halves, you're going to write it as 1 and 1/2. Okay, as a mixed number. And I explain simplification in a different video, so I'm not going to explain why that is. Let's try a larger fraction, which is not as familiar. Let's try 20 over 32 divided by 2/3, okay? So we're going to write the first one as it is. We're going to change the division sign to multiplication, and we're going to flip the second one, okay? Now, again, we can multiply straight across. So 3 times 20 is 60, and 2 times 32 is 64. Then we can simplify both of them, okay? By 2 if you want, by 3, depending on what it is. I'm not going to go ahead and simplify it, okay? Because that's not the point of this video. So, but that's what 20 over 32 divided by 2/3 ends up being. That's it before simplification, okay? And because technically it's multiplication, remember you can simplify in advance, okay? So that you don't have to simplify at the end. But that's what multiplication and division of fractions are like. You don't have to worry about the common denominator. You just multiply straight across when you have multiplication, and then simplify if needed. When it's division, you write the first fraction, change the division sign to multiplication, flip the second fraction, and then you multiply basically, and then again simplify at the end.